We are here.
Bring your camera down.
I just saw that. Yeah, I just.
It's like, that's a really nice wall, but
There we go.
yeah, well,
Yeah, just it.
yeah, cool.
There we go.
Oh, there's your friend Mika. Hi, Mika. All right, it is 7 o'clock, and you know what time that is. It's time for ThoughtFLOW with me, Misty Cauthen, and my friend and fellow chats a lot, Nikki Taylor Stewart. And we have a lot to talk about today, and we're really, well, the intended topic for today is evolutionary goals and intentional choices, and how through evolutionary goals or through making intentional choices, we can better manage, hi Jerry, our goals moving forward. I can't get this waving thing. Maybe one day, but not today. Jerry, no, I'm waving with my hand and in my heart. So anyway, that is the intended topic. However, Nikki and I, as we are ones of this world, we tend to get swept away about other things that we find to be pressing. And
that was water, Misty. I saw that look. That's just what.
You know, I actually meant to bring some tequila out here with me, seriously, because it is that kind of ass sandwich kind of day.
This is not water.
I am texting Glenn. He's bringing me tequila, and that's it. So this call might get a little bit sloppy, but that's okay. There's a lot going on on the planet right now. Mercury is in retrograde, which is definitely terrible. Terrible.
No.
Okay, the first few days are a bit of an adjustment, Nikki. Oh, you can take it. So there's that. There's Juneteenth. This is Pride Month, guys. We haven't, hi, Erica. We have not talked about it, but this is Pride Month. This is a month of light and beauty and goodness, and we barely even discussed it. So there's that. And then Nikki has a break the machine topic for like right now, because this is pressing and it's so pertinent, because everybody right now has big thoughts and big opinions, but we don't always feel like it's safe or comfortable, or like we can be confident in making our statements with our big girl outdoor voice or big boy without repercussions. And it's hard to stand in your own space and stand tall. So that's where we're going here. I'm gonna let Nikki ride. Hi, Jason.
So, standing in your space, with everything that's going on, we are getting. I feel like people are just, in dark, right? Throwing their opinions your way, and why don't you believe this? And because, of course, we live in this time where people say something, and that's what you're supposed to believe. And it's like, but, okay, yeah, but I have my own opinion. Loving me doesn't equal hating you. Standing in your space against volatility, standing in your space against heavily opinionated people who don't want to have a discussion, because a discussion, a witty repartee, right? That is a back and forth. That is, I can kind of see that point. Oh, yeah. Oh, okay. But it is not a discussion to only commit to your opinion and not be willing to experience the other side. Not repeating. So standing in your space, right? What is that space? You got to know what that space is. You have to define your space. You have to understand what is your space. Because then, in order to, I don't know if defend is the right word. I don't ever feel like I'm defending my space. I just support my position. This is my space. I own it. I don't need to defend it because it's mine. I welcome you into my space if you want to have a witty repartee. But being okay and being strong enough and being willful enough and having the integrity to stand in your space and not feel like you have to be threatened because you might be convinced a different way.
And let me interrupt real quick, Nikki. So I want to talk about this idea of standing in your space, and just for people who aren't familiar, because you and I talk like this all the time, but the idea of standing in your space, right? That doesn't necessarily mean, I'm taking up space physically, but it's thought space, it's idea space. It is, where am I positioned in terms of views, in terms of the way the world looks like through my lens and my filter, and being able to say, both from a head and a heart perspective, that's okay, that's not okay, and being okay to have opinions and being okay to voice said opinions, but also being open to having those opinions maybe challenged in a way, or supported, but in a way that you can still hold true to your convictions or be swayed. And I think it takes a truly minded person to be able to be open and be swayed in this time and day and age, where everybody is standing by their ideas like it's their Alamo, and I'm not wearing a mask, and I don't like those people, or whatever it is. And that's what we're talking about, standing in your own space. You can stand in your own space in a solid way, but not be a dick about it. Sorry, I have to just say it the way I would say it to my child.
But I think you bring up an interesting point, right? So people are standing in their space. People are standing in a space, but it's an uneducated space. Yeah, I said it. Like, people are standing in their space, and I'm like, if you don't understand the past, if you view this, you didn't have to say to any Black person that this started with George Floyd. It started with 1619. It didn't start with George Floyd. George Floyd was a teeny tiny little straw on a huge mound of straws the size of Mount Everest and deeper than the Grand Canyon. Oh my gosh, George Floyd, George Floyd. Yeah, I get it. I get it. And it doesn't make his death any more sad than all of the other deaths that were just as sad, just as needless. But this stopped with Floyd. It was loud. It was loud, and his fight, he was speaking, saying that he couldn't breathe. It was very loud because, of course, it wasn't the first time that we heard that, irony of that, right? Mm-hmm. But standing in a space that has no foundation, but right, they you to relinquish your space, which is not only rooted to the ground, it's rooted to the very core of the earth. So no, I'm gonna stand in my space because it's mine. I own it. I claimed it. I made it. I built it. I stroked it. I structured it. It's mine. And so educate yourselves. Educate yourselves about whatever. By educate yourselves, I do mean, even for my Black brethren, are you unapproachable? Mm-hmm. In an effort, because this is a collective goal. Wherever we end up, it must be a collective journey.
Yes.
But the question is, are you shutting down conversations? Are you stuff?
Nikki, let me interrupt you real quick, because what you're saying is so golden, but your mic is being hateful. It's in out. It's just, your mic is being a dick about it.
Uh-oh. It must not.
And now you're just like,
I'm here.
Technical difficulties on ThoughtFLOW. The thought is log jammed right here. Yeah, no, you're in and out. So say something. Hello. I don't even have you. I can't even hear you. What's happening? Can you guys hear me out there? Give me a click or something. Nikki, something? biscuits.
I think we're
Okay. Hear you now. Say something.
No, I'm still here.
There you go. Okay. Erica's giving us a thumbs up because she's like, these two out here. So see if you can pick up where you were. All right. Well, we're going to try to work on our mic situation, but I do want to throw this out here right now. And because I think what Nikki was saying is so important, in that what we have to make sure that we do is, even as thought leaders, right? There are those of us out here who are representing, or we're claiming to represent, or whatever it is, a large group of people, whether we look the same or we talk the same or we have the same gender identity, whatever it is. We're claiming to represent some people in a lot of ways, but if we're not open, if we're not hearing the conversation of those around us, then what are we really representing? Who are we representing? We're not representing, and it's okay to not represent everybody, but you have to make it clear that you're not representing everybody. If you're going out here beating on your chest and saying, hey, my point of view matters, I'm talking to all of these people, representing everybody, and the people behind you are like, holy balls, you're not representing me, then perhaps you should have discussions with those people that you're claiming to represent and see if maybe you've gone off the rails. See if maybe you've taken on a responsibility that isn't yours to take on. Like when somebody reaches out to me and asks me to represent the Black community, I'm like, listen, dude, I'm just Misty from the suburbs. I can only share with you my life and what I have been through in this world, because I can't speak for Nikki in Chicago. We've had, love the girl. I can speak to her for hours, but I can't speak about her experience.
Misty from the block.
Misty from the, that's right. Yes. Cottonwood Drive. It was a crazy street. But I tell you, it's the best street to grow up on in the whole wide world. So any of you guys from Garden City, we're right here. Represent the suburbs. I don't know. So go ahead, Nikki. I feel like we're getting better here.
No. It was really just about having the courage to stand in your space. It's when no one is remotely standing up. And remember, what's your goal? What is the end goal? What do you want? What happens at this moment in time? Because there's a whole bunch of years ahead. Hopefully, we'll all still be here and living. What happens?
So what advice would you give then if you were working with somebody who claimed to be representing everyone, that whole monolithic view, I'll call that, but you felt like in order to stand up in your space, you had to directly challenge this person and their positions?
The first question, what is your goal? You know, where do you want to end? Where do you end? How do you start? What is the progression? And emotions are a powerful thing. Powerful thing. Anger anger is an emotion that is really rooted in sadness, frustration. Um, so that's what you're, but that's not your goal. It doesn't mean don't feel your sadness, don't feel your frustration. Put that over here. Put it in your back pocket. Wear it as a cue. But get to your goal. Unmask your anger so that you can go. And I'm still gonna stand and say, that's great. I hear you. I understand the way that you feel. I mean that. all of it, but I certainly can touch on some of the points depending on whether it's your studio, whether it's back because you live in California and it's for. Um, so that's August. I think I heard a friend of mine say today, whether it's a black person, whether it's angry because you're like, my kids are not going to be back in school. But at the end of the day, the emotion, how are you working that problem? Gotta work the problem. And I back. What is this a personal thing? And move outside of your person just for a minute. If you're going to be that mind, if you're going to speak and hold a group, then you have to speak and represent, hold the group.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And there may be members in your group or your organization that you just don't agree with.
Yeah.
But they're still important parts of the organization. That's why they're there. So then you can't just wantonly disregard somebody when you're a part of an organizational structure just because you don't like them or their views. And I think that's important to remember too. But at the same time, they have to stand in their space too. So if they decide that it's not a good fit, you just might have to take some other steps, that is.
Favorite glasses, I'm holding on to it for life.
So anyway, what else do we want to talk about in terms of standing in your space, taking up your space in the room?
I think that to our overall conversation, right? Because if you work as a group, and I can't voice, then by default, the group. In terms of that standing in your space, right? And someone personalizing it too much. But we can also do we can also I'm sorry you guys. I'm going to but when we do that to ourselves, right? We have these kind of dead stop because our goal was to our goal was to I don't have anything on. I don't have anything in the corner and little.
Are you sitting down low or up high?
Well, I'm sitting where I always sit.
Yeah, it was an issue the other week though too. Somebody said. So I just wonder if you turn yourself either this way a little more or that way a little bit more.
Okay, let's see.
So this is the part of the call where we pan around Vicky's room and
Okay, I'm gonna put my headphones on, but I'm gonna grab.
Okay, so while Nikki is grabbing her headphones, I'm going to do an interpretive dance, and it's going to be to something by Enya. I'm kidding. I'm kidding. So back to the point at hand. In terms of finding your voice and standing into your space. So one of the reasons why this was a big topic for me today, and Nikki as well. Thank you, Uni, for understanding, and Cassie for your idea there, your whatever that was, that message there. One of the reasons why this was a thought for me to talk about today, and Nikki too, was with everything happening and with these protests going on and whatnot, people are having to take a look at the people that they surround themselves with. I have a girlfriend who was like, I just really realized for the first time that my family is a bunch of racists. And I was like, well, how do you negotiate that? What are you going to do? And she said, I honestly don't know, because it's my family and they're all I have. And I don't want to walk away and leave my family behind. But at the same time, I can't justify not standing up for myself and standing up for the people that I associate with in that space. And I said, yeah, I know a lot of people are having trouble with this right now, but everything that's happening right now is literally tearing families apart, friendships and families. And it's become a real turning point or a tipping point for a lot of relationships that we have. But I also think we're at a point now where we can no longer just sit by and just, cover our mouth when somebody tells the shady joke about the transgender person, or says the terrible thing about the black waiter. We're past that point now. We need to be past that point. So we have to find ways to cope in these spaces that might not be friendly spaces. And that may mean you walk away. Here's a story to make it relatable. So growing up, and my dad was a really, really great guy, but he also grew up at a time where there was a lot of shady stuff going on. He was in the US Navy in the 60s, and Vietnam and all that crap that was going on back then. And he would talk about the things that happened in the military to black service members. So, he's a little bit jaded. Can't blame him. But, so he had his views and he had his things. And one of the things that he would say when he saw biracial couples, he would use the term zebras. And I would be like, Dad, that's terrible. And, me, Dad, that's gross. That's terrible. Why are you talking like that? And, it was just a thing. It was just what he did. But my dad, it's funny because when I started dating my now ex-husband, the minute we started dating, he stopped using that term and he never used it again. Because he had his viewpoints. I don't necessarily know that they changed, though I think they did, but maybe they didn't. But my dad wasn't afraid to stand in his space with his viewpoints, but not stand in a way that was going to damage us. And he knows me. Well, he's not here anymore, so you know what I'm trying to say. He knows that I would not have tolerated that in that space, and I would have rebelled, walked away, done whatever I do, throw the match and walk away. And he made the change. I didn't have to beg him. I didn't have to ask. He looked at the situation and it was the right thing to do. And I will always admire him for that, because he was in his 50s. A lot of people don't want to change when they're in their 50s. Now they're getting close to 50, though. I'm not going to be one of those people who's just getting 50. So that's on record.
All right. Can you guys hear me better?
Yes.
Oh, awesome.
Oh my gosh. Now I feel like we need to redo the whole beginning. Just kidding.
No. JK. No, I mean, let's jump back on topic and let's talk about what that is to
evolve.
Yeah, no, there's an echo. Sorry. Yeah, there's a huge echo.
Oh, I can't hear it. Thanks, Brett, for letting us know.
Oh, yeah. Welcome to Mercury retrograde.
Yeah.
But
your volume down, your input volume down a little bit. So, getting back to the point here and talking about intentional choices and evolutionary goals.
Mm-hmm.
And evolving through change. So we're looking at big major shifts here, and Mercury retrograde, just throwing it out there. Nikki, how do we manage that?
Well, we spoke about this in terms of when you and I were talking together, just staying in survival mode. Mm-hmm. and not realizing that you can actually go, whoa, monkey wrench, throw a monkey wrench in that stayed frantic position and say, I'm going to intentionally flip the script. And taking a step back and realizing, am I progressing or am I just in survival mode and just, constantly running on my hamster wheel? Because in that moment, you can't plan. You can't survey the land. You can't assess. You can't make choices based on growing because your mindset is simply to survive. So intentionally stopping, whether you make a sign that says stop the madness, or whether you get a monkey wrench and carry it around with you, just taking a step back and realizing my energy, my effort is keeping me in survival mode, right? So that brings us back to week 1, week 2, self-reliance.
Right.
Am I paying attention to my own energy, to my own self, to my own reliability? Taking that step back and then saying, what is my focus here? What is my goal? And for a hot second, your focus and your goal might simply be to focus on your goal. And
right.
And to identify what are my goals, because we have now, so let's take our umbrella, right? We've now been in stay in place for, Chicago was March 20th or 21st.
20 years.
So it was not. So 3 months. Well, after that 3rd week, and you realized how unpredictable the whole sequence was going to be. And to be perfectly honest, there's still a level of unpredictability.
Level. I mean, we have no clear direction at this point.
Correct. And so you have to say, do I just stay here, or do I begin to map out a plan? I think there's a safety in mapping out a plan. The safety is in that you take back control over a situation or aspects of a situation that you can't control. I can't control how many people are going to go to Florida and lay out on the beach and then come back to Chicago and, try to touch me.
Touch me, you bastards.
But I can control my ability to teach online. I can say, I can't control that, so my kids aren't going to summer camp. Versus staying in that space where I go, oh, is summer camp opening, and what does summer camp look like, and can we afford it? No.
Absolutely.
And so the more things that I am able to control, okay, I'm a control freak, but this is not like
control. It's not capital C control. It's
no.
I think it's important to say this because, are we looking to control our environment? We're human beings. Most of us don't just wake up and lay there and hope that stuff happens to us. We are active participants in our lives.
Correct.
So you are trying to control your environment in a way that is manageable and remotely predictable, because as humans, we do need a certain element of predictability to feel safe.
Sure.
But it's not capital C control. I need to know when I'm getting back in the studio right now.
Correct.
That doesn't happen. When do I get to take this mask off? When do I get to hug my family again? We don't know. So you can choke the chicken and it's dead and you can't even eat it. Or you can be nice to the chicken and have a nice pet.
Well, and so like the school thing, right? I have no idea if the brick and mortar school thing is going to open and happen in that way that we are so used to. And then I go, oh, wait, do I want to send my kids to the brick and mortar school in the way that we're used to? But we have already started researching other options.
Mm-hmm.
And that makes me comfortable in a sense, because it wasn't like how e-learning was thrust upon us and we didn't have a choice. And I feel like my kids' school and their teachers did a brilliant job, because literally we went down on Friday the 20th, and that following Monday they had stuff, and it wasn't perfect and it wasn't always streamlined, but they did it. And taking that a step further and looking at online school options, we're playing with a couple of different programs this summer, and we're prepared, and we're talking to our boys who like to sleep until noon. We're talking to our boys about, you know, which programs work for them, which programs, and so that we are creating our own plan. And if whatever the school system comes up with works, or a hybrid, or we can do a little bit of this and a little bit of that, we don't feel like we're just like, you know, just hanging on the tightrope wire, right? But making that conscious choice to make a choice,
Right.
and pulling yourself out of survival mode is sometimes as simple as saying, stop, I'm in survival mode.
Sometimes I just like to say, stop hammer time. Anybody that says stop with a pause like that, I am screaming on it. I can't stop myself.
Hammer time.
Can't touch this. You know, I gotta say, but you know, we're so stupid. But you know, even those moments of levity, right? You gotta laugh. You gotta say, you know what? I can't control this. I am not gonna wear pants this week, and I am okay with not wearing pants. Because if not, once again, you are overwrought over something that you really can't affect change on. So the only thing that you can change in the situation is you and your participation in the situation, rather than letting it own you.
For the record, Misty is not wearing pants.
I'm wearing pants right now. Just right now, though. I mean, if I would have brought my tequila to this call, there would be no pants. I'm just saying I have a tequila pants problem. So.
But I also think that some people feel like they, and I guess I used to feel like this. I used to feel like I thrive in survival mode. And survival mode is exhausting. It raises your cortisol levels. It keeps your engine running and burning longer than it has to. And she tells you to stand up, Missy.
Hands.
But I think some people think that they are their best selves when they're in survival mode. But when you have to, I can't see in survival mode, and that's just real and that's just honest. You miss details.
Sure.
And we must all be honest about that, because the goal is not to see the details. The goal is to survive. So, you know, imagine you're like one of those wilderness people and you're out in the woods, and, you know, you got to, your goal is not to stop by the beautiful brook and lay out a picnic and, you know, observe how beautiful. Your goal is to make sure, you know, the camp on the other side is not coming after you and going to shoot you with the paint guns or whatever they're going to shoot you with. Your goal is to survive. That's a different mindset. That's a different mentality. And it only allows you to see the details as they pertain to your survival.
Right.
It does not allow you to see the teacher who is constantly 5 minutes late. Because in survival mode, you're thinking, oh, thank God she showed up. See, that's not progress.
Right.
You know, it doesn't allow you to see the client. I'm going to speak a lot about from the Pilates perspective, because that's what I do. It doesn't allow you to see the client who swears they're level 3. And you know they're level like -1.
Right. Just read a book about is online, and it was really just the footnotes, and then was an expert.
Correct. But in survival mode, you're like, I got another body in the seat. But it doesn't allow you to look at how the other class participants are affected by that. And those are the things, and that's why you have to, that monkey wrench, that whack-a-mole mallet, like whatever that is, right? You have to take a step back. And maybe there are varying degrees of survival mode. Maybe there's like, you know, like level 1 survival mode, and maybe there's level 10. But at some point, you have to get out of the adrenaline rush so that you can see the details and you can move towards progress and not stay in surviving.
Well, and one of the things that people are saying, you know, if you listen to people talking about how they're navigating through this, oh, yeah, I'm great. I'm doing so well. I love being at home.
I'm
And then
fine.
they say, I haven't slept really. I haven't had a good night's sleep since March 18th. And I don't really know what that is, but I'm fabulous, you know, and I just had my 5th order from Wines and Spirits this week. But you know, everything's okay. You know, there's coping mechanisms, and I'm not one to poo-poo anybody's coping mechanisms, because my current coping mechanisms are no pants and simply Cheetos. Okay, it's a thing.
Those are
And
good.
they're so good, the white cheddar jalapeno ones. That's my coping mechanism. But you know what? It's also, it's saying, okay, I have this thing. Maybe not the best thing. It's certainly not like a jog up and down the street. Hashtag run when taste. But what it is it's that little piece that keeps me distracted here, so I can focus on the progress I need to be making to stay in small c control over a capital M mess that we're living in right now.
For the record, Misty, you do a really good Stepford wife.
What? What do you mean? Is it the Cheetos?
I'm fabulous.
Oh, yeah.
I'm fabulous. I haven't slept since March 18th, but I'm fabulous.
It's all tequila. Just kidding. Really, it hasn't been any tequila today. But yeah, I mean, I see it all the time. If there's anything I can do, it's mimic. And I see it all the time, and I hear it a lot. And, you know, are you saying that for yourself, or are you saying it for me? Either way, it's not productive, because you can't move ahead if you're stuck in the bullshit. That's going to go on a t-shirt.
Well, and it's also shrouded in a lie of omission, right? Because that person is not in the pandemic by themselves.
No.
We're all very well aware of what's going on, and we're all experiencing it, and we're like, well, why is she fabulous? I'm not fabulous, and I'm okay with not being fabulous right now.
Then you feel like you're broken because everyone else is fabulous. Everyone else is just fabulous, and you're all buzzed. Your hair's jacked up. You haven't brushed your teeth in days. You got Cheeto remnants in your bed. You don't know what happened. You actually might be sleep eating at this point. It is a thing. And really, if somebody would have just said, you know what, I'm struggling too. Oh my gosh, does that take the pressure off? And then now you've got like somebody to commiserate with, and somebody that you can actually work with to move forward.
And well, really and I think that breath, right? What you just did, it was a breath. It was an exhale. You know, and that's what it is, to take a step back out of survival mode and to make preparations for progression. And we use the term evolutionary goals simply because when we establish a goal and we're like, oh my gosh, I'm going to open a studio and it's going to look like this and it's going to have this and it's going to have that and blah, 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 right? Blase, skippy, blase. But the goal is really not, to open the studio. The studio is a vehicle for you to get your hands on bodies and mush them and, you know, make body cakes and get people to do stuff.
Or to have something to do, or to have, you know, a foothold in the community. You know, everybody gets into these things for different reasons. It's important to establish what those reasons are ahead of time, by the way. And that's another talk for another day. But continue.
But you notice that the neighborhood changed. You're 3 years in. You're 3 years in and you realize, oh my gosh, a new business, a significant amount of new businesses closed within the first year. You realize you're 3 years in and you're like, oh. But then you say, oh, my demographic kind of changed a little bit. I don't have that lunchtime crowd. But I'm going to keep that class on the schedule because my first 2 years, it was really popular. I'm just going to keep that class on the schedule. No, no, no. You have to evolve. And part of the floating goal, you can't assign because you don't know that it needs to shift, change, pivot, wave, roll, hammer time. You have to be there. You have to have taken that part of the journey to say, oh, this needs to shift and slide this way. You have to take that journey. And so I can't set my goals. I can have a scaffolding, and I'm very much a scaffolding person. I at least like to have a little bit of a framework. That's me. I have to have a little bit of framework. But I'm totally fine moving the furniture around, pulling the wallpaper down, putting different wallpaper up, shifting the furniture over here. And I allow myself that malleability because it allows me to keep my goals evolving and not feel like I'm stuck in one place. And so for me, opening a studio was not about opening the studio. In some aspects, that got in my way. I really just wanted my hands on bodies. I wanted to work with people, and I wanted to be in a position where I could work on them in a way that I knew was good and right and true and honest. But I had to have a studio because I sometimes check that box D does not work well with others. And I wanted to evolve.
And does not share.
But I wanted to be able to evolve in the way that worked for me. I wanted to evolve in the way that you would allow me to work with clients in that way. And you have to get out of survival mode. You have to, even if it's just standing in the mirror and saying, I can't just survive, I must also thrive. I have to thrive. I have to move forward.
Yeah.
And up and out.
Idea. An idea is, this was an idea. This is my phone. It's solid. It doesn't really change. I can download apps. I can run out of battery. I can recharge it. But the phone is the phone. The studio, the brick and mortar studio, it's the building. It's the equipment. It's the this. It's the that.
Correct.
It's who you enter the day you open should not be who you are 2 years from now, 3 years from now.
Right.
It's an evolutionary process. Your goals have to evolve along with you, or else you're really just stagnant. And then you wonder why you're losing money, your studio's not growing. Well, you're still running that noon lunchtime class junket that stopped paying you months ago, years ago even. So making intentional choices means being awake and connected to your goals and realizing that the goal may slide, the goalpost slides as you evolve. If you are not sliding that goalpost, if you're not constantly looking forward, now I'm not saying look forward into 2026. There's a reason why they tell us to make 3-month, 6-month, 12-month goals. Because you can't be too far outstretched in the future. But what you can be doing is constantly looking, evaluating inside your head, inside your heart. Maybe you decide after the first year that this is bupkis and you would rather have a tiki hut, on the beach somewhere and sell coconuts. Well, then, if you're running a Pilates studio and your goal is to sell coconuts, you can either use the Pilates studio and build your nest egg and prepare to sell it and get the cash to go build your coconut shack, or you can just stay miserable because you will end up miserable. Why? Because you have not made your intentional choice and you have not evolved with it.
Well, and you know what? So here's the thing, right? Speaking of coconuts and tiki huts, I think this is going to sidetrack just a little bit, but I think I believe that it has to do with evolutionary goals. I do what I love and I love what I do. And I have for a very long time, like over 20 years. And when I walk into my space, it was always, it just felt good. You know, when I was working with my clients, it felt I was honored, and I looked forward to every piece of their progress, if it was minuscule or if it was big, right? We have those times where the client is having like just an epiphany day, right? But when you walk into the space that is yours, it should feel like home in your heart and soul. And I think we dishonor ourselves when we walk into the space, any space that we are required to spend a significant amount of time in, and we don't feel that, because that space, if I'm in my studio for 5 hours, I'm in that space, I'm in that environment, I'm encapsulated in that. Even though my ceilings are almost 20 feet high, it can feel open and airy, or it can feel like a catacomb. And is that survival mode? You know, did you get into a business or a thing, right? And you're like, but this was my goal. This was my goal. This is what I said I was going to do. So what? It didn't work out. Move on.
Well, I think there's an ebb and flow with that, though. You know, there are days when I walk into my studio, well, back when I used to walk into my studio, and I'd be like, oh man, I've missed you. I've only been gone for 8 hours, but it's so good to be back here. And then there are days when I would walk into that place and I wished that, you know, it would explode. Or even worse, remember the movie Poltergeist, when the whole house got sucked into the pool and then it went back into the void? Like, there'd be days where I would drive to work and I'd be like, oh man, if we could just have a poltergeist moment, I would be pleased. My insurance company would pay off. Like, it would be great. And it wasn't because I didn't like what I did or what I do. And
Right.
It also wasn't because I didn't honor it. It was just a rut. You know, it's just like being married. Your studio, remember the other week, the quote was crispy toddlers. The studio is sometimes like that toddler. It won't go up. It craps on the floor, sets the house down like it's a terrible toddler. But that in itself is a thing, because you have to be honest with yourself. If you're having too many times where you're just hoping that you come around the corner and there was a terrible landslide and the building was engulfed in stone and mud.
Absolutely.
You might have to say, this relationship is, you know, baby, it's not you, it's me. You might have
But
to
that's
say.
my point. That's my point. When you're working on something for you, when you're working on the thing that's supposed to feed your soul. I love that phrase, because I think that it speaks volumes for something to go so deep, to touch you so deep that it feeds your soul. If it's not feeding your soul, yeah, we're going to have bad days for sure. You walk into the studio, you know, after your building tells you that you actually don't have heat because your unit isn't attached to any HVAC.
Oh, that sounds
And they
Ooh.
and you live in Chicago and one whole wall is windows. I digress. You're going to have bad days. But at the end of the day, the sandcastle that you're building has to have weight, it has to have substance, it has to mean something to you, and it has to be you putting in an effort that will match the meal you need to feed your soul. Right. And you cannot expect that if that is not the effort and the energy that you're putting in, right? So back to those evolutionary goals. Take the freaking 12:30 math class off because it was awesome for year 1 and year 2. It began to wane, but you still have it on. And then you're pissed because 1 or 2 people show up. You feel compelled to teach, but you know that your minimum is 3 people, but you're still teaching. That's survival mode. That's holding on to what it was. What it was is how you got open.
Right.
That's how you got open, and that's valid. You know, I taught at Performing Arts High School, And I used to proctor some of the auditions, and it was so interesting because we'd have these kids come from Dolly Dinkle. If you're a dancer, you know what Dolly Dinkle is. It's just like podunk, like recreational dance, and the whole curriculum is about the recital.
But it was the best school in town.
It was the best school in town.
Dolly Dinkle, I mean, they were like jazz hands. They had
and costumes.
Art school,
costumes. You had stock in a costume company, right?
Oh yeah.
And they would come and they would audition, and like during the audition, we had to assess their propensity. And you're like, okay. And then they would get in, and I taught novice, and we had a novice track. We had a definitely higher levels, but we had a novice track, and I liked novice because they were almost always freshmen, and freshmen are just so eager to please, and I couldn't stand seniors. I digress. So they would come in, and during their first evaluation, which was sometime in October, some of them would be sitting at the table just in tears. And they, and I was like, okay, let me just break this down for you. I'm like, in your school, somebody told you were the best. You were the best dancer. You were in the highest level. I'm like, oh. Right. Okay.
My mom got me these special points.
But that was a teeny tiny little fishbowl. Yes. And out here in the rest of the world, you're not the best. But what you are is you got here. Whatever you did up to that point got you here. Mm-hmm. And you can say that, you can tell your mom to have a meeting with the department head and say, my daughter needs to be in level 3 or 4 or however we did it. I think we let her. I don't even remember anymore. And I said, but now you've seen those dancers, right? You've seen them. You've seen that ballet class. You've seen their modern class. Do you think that you could hold your own with those dancers? No, they're really good. So, but that's the level you're trying to get your mom to tell the director to put you in. So would that be us setting you up for success or setting you up for failure? Well, I just thought I was a better dancer at my other school. And it's like, but that school got you here.
But that's all.
Now what are you willing to do?
It is not a guaranteed season pass to perform anywhere.
No.
Each step leads you to the next step. What you choose to do, your intentional choice to move ahead, is based on the actions and the effort that you put forth to move
exactly
forward. And if you're not willing to do it, and I don't care what it is, it can be Dolly Dinkle dance, it can be your Pilates training, certification, mentorship, whatever. It can be selling mortgages. If you're not in the right mindset to make the choices that are going to get you to success, well, you cannot expect the magical success fairy to come down and bring it to you. It doesn't work that way. Your goals have to evolve based on the amount of effort and talent and wisdom and fortitude that you bring to the table in the first place.
Right. And realizing your strengths. Realizing your strengths. Staying in survival mode. Why are you in survival mode? Are you in survival mode because you don't know what to do and you're not quite sure what you're good at? Are you in survival mode because you don't choose to actually push yourself to grow in the areas that will give you more chutzpah? Whether you need a little bit more something over here or a little less something over here. But putting a stop to it and saying, okay, looking at a realistic view of what is successful, whether it's your business, whether it's your life, whether it's your marriage. I mean, whether it's just this time period, right? It's ambiguous. Mm-hmm. What are you successful at? Because I believe that we have all managed being thrown into this pit, right? I believe that we've all managed to find a couple things that we've become successful at.
Yes.
You know, and then looking at that, me getting on my bike and going for a bike ride, I'm kind of addicted to it. And it's not something that I would have done before the pandemic. I didn't own a bike before the pandemic. And jumping on my bike at 6:30 in the morning and riding through the forest preserve, wouldn't have done it. But it's a respite. It's become a respite for me. It's become a place I just think about stuff, and people are so friendly in my little Pleasantville town, and hey, how you doing? Especially if they've seen you on the trail, and everybody's just like, morning, and I'm like, morning. But it's a time for me. And as much as I was saying I wanted to carve out time for me, I wasn't doing it. I wasn't doing it.
Yeah, I'm still working on it, but I am a bit of a workaholic. This is just who I've always been. But I know that it's an issue, and I've acknowledged the issue.
Step one.
I'm giving you guys a confessional here. But it's true. It's looking at the change that we need to see.
Thank you, Trisha Lee.
That was so nice. Nikki Taylor Stewart is the best teacher that I have had the blessing to teach with. Look at that.
Dancer. That's a dancer. Yeah, we used to teach together in a summer youth program.
Well, that's beautiful. I love it. So, you know, I want to talk about evolving through change, because we've talked about all this big change and, you know, choices and blah, blah, blah. And how are we going to then take this and apply it to moving ahead? And so just a couple points that I've been pondering as we've been having this conversation. One of the things I think people get hamstrung with when it comes to talking about change and moving forward through change is the idea that they don't want to be defined. People don't want to be defined by the change. Whether the change is kicking back a gear to manage through survival mode, or it's pushing forward to take yourself, your career, your whatever it is, to the next level. The change does not define you, but the actions that you take might. So,
yeah,
kind of something to keep in mind as we're moving forward, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And you know what? Change is scary. Change is uncomfortable. Change is uncomfortable, but when we are uncomfortable, we allow ourselves to be. Is it raining?
Yes.
Oh, we allow ourselves to be vulnerable, and I think that people think that vulnerability is bad, but I think that vulnerability allows you to open yourself up to possibilities. And when you open yourself up to possibilities, change can start to occur, because when you open yourself up, you begin to see different perspectives, and not perspectives across like just the horizon line or just the vertical line, but you see it more of an array. And so your options open up, right? And an opportunity is only an opportunity if you know that it exists. But if you shroud yourself and don't allow yourself to be vulnerable, vulnerability got a bad rap, right? I mean, when we fall in love, we have to be vulnerable, because I think sometimes it's really easy to give love, but you must also
Shit.
But I think it's easy to give love. I really do. I think that it's very easy for people to give love because they're in control of that. But I think to receive love requires you to open yourself up, right? And to trust and to do all of that stuff that you have to do when you're receiving love. So I think that vulnerability has a bad rap. I think that when you allow yourself to be vulnerable and you open yourself up, when you open yourself up to receive, you gain access to a lot of different options, and options that you may not have known were there or existed or could be afforded to you. And then you can change and you can shift and you can pivot and you can sundial and you can turn and you can coast. But you can allow change to take place So even if it's little step by step by step, it doesn't have to be big and gregarious. You don't have to jump off.
Sure.
Flying squirrel.
But that comes back to acceptance, right? Because if you're not being vulnerable, there's a power struggle, right? There's an inequity. Right. And I don't care how frozen off from the world you are or how rigid you are, you're going to be aware of that inequity. Whereas if you just accept the love that's coming towards you.
My son wants his chair.
Oh, kids, this is what happens. See, when they're bad when they're toddlers and they're bad when they get bigger. They want your chair. But if you can accept the change, whether that change is being more vulnerable, whether that change is opening your heart, whether that change is closing your business, when you accept the change, right, as Mark said, you see yourself in a brand new light.
Yes.
And the change is accessible then you can grow from it. Then you can make intentional choices from that change. That's huge.
That's awesome, because we can see the change sometimes, right? And we like, we're like grasping at it and we're like, no, I missed it. And oh, wait. But that vulnerability allows you to actually access it and bring it into you. Yeah, look at you being all prophetic.
Just call me the Oracle. And one other thing, we talked about this the other day, Nikki, and then we'll like wrap it up because here we are at an hour again, and we could probably go for another half hour. But sometimes when you're evolving, and when your goals are evolving, and you're moving the goalpost, as we've been saying through this whole chat tonight, sometimes you realize that there are things that you have to let go. That in your evolution, you have to leave some of those old paradigms in the past, and that's hard. That's pain. That's gut wrenching. And a lot. We love you too, Mark. For a lot of people, that kind of inhibits the forward progress because they don't want to move. They don't want to let go. But perhaps in the acceptance, we can talk about maybe visiting the stages of grief that happen so you can deal with the change and then continue to move along forward, go after the goalpost rather than just throwing in the towel because, you're never going to be 5'8". But I'm 5'8" in my mind, and that's got to count for something. Every dance resume, Nikki, every single one of my dance resumes said 5'8", by the way.
For the record, those of you who have not seen her live and in person, she is not 5'8".
But I have a big personality, and that's got to count.
She does. She has a big personality.
See? So.
Yeah, are we going to wrap this up, Misty, or are we going to talk about mourning? No.
Ooh, I don't know. That's a big topic.
That's a big topic.
We might need to bring that back for next week.
Mm-hmm. We might have to circle back around.
We've been circling around since week 1. We keep coming back to these same topics, but each week they get bigger. So
they are bigger.
I think mourning is definitely a big one, but I also think we need to talk some about all the big things that are going on right now at this time in June that we are living. So we need to
tag your it, break away.
Well, you can't do that now. We're going to do that later. Next week. So it'll go in with our mourning and our discussion. No, Mark, I'm not even 5'5". Listen. When I hang upside down on my inversion table for like 2 days straight, I'm still not 5'5". But in my mind, I am 5'8". Until I have to get my pants altered. Then the truth comes out. So, everyone, thank you for coming to play for ThoughtFLOW Volume 3. Technical difficulties aside, and now Rain. It's always fun to chat with all of you guys and my buddy Nikki. So thanks for coming.
Happy Mercury retrograde, guys.
Oh, this shit. Let me tell you something. I'm about over it already. Day 2. Listen. I mean, I'm ready for the next thing. I'm just saying. I mean, after this talk, it's tequila and Simply Cheetos, and it's going to happen right now. Tamisha, thank you. Thank you for
All
coming.
right, guys.
We will see you guys next time. Thank
next
you, Brett.
week. Thank you
Next
for
week,
joining us.
take care. Bye, Brett.
Bye.